I've picked another trail. This is Lawrence Fleming again. I'm going to walk in here for a little bit and then I'll switch it around. I'm trying to find a place that I can sit and read. This should be a busy weekend, but we've been saying that for a while. Keep watching, it's all we can do. Tonight is, or today, today's the 13th, Friday the 13th. Tomorrow is the 14th, it's the anniversary that we celebrate for Israel. Now they've already had their day that they celebrate, which I think was the 5th or 6th of May. But this is the official UN-approved State of Israel date. Tomorrow will be. And then on the 15th, we have our second Passover. First one was so good, we're going to have a second one. Sounds like second breakfast. So I'm going to go ahead and switch it to my view, and then we'll talk some more. Okay, this is much better. I had to sit down because it was getting hot. If the breeze settles down and there's no breeze, it's stifling here. It's overcast, so it's not as hot as it could be, but it's still hot. All right. I'm wearing my Savior t-shirt, but this is my Walking Dead Savior. So even though I was on The Walking Dead, I was still a Savior. It might get noisy in here with cars coming out because this is the public area. I got through the... He's got a boat in the back of his truck. I got through the trail and this is what's at the other end, so here we are. While we wait, like I said, what I want to do is cover some of the people involved. I've already been doing that a bit. You saw my attempt to see if I could get further away from my camera and read, and the sound's not any good. I can't find all my stuff's in storage, and I'd have to basically empty it out to find everything I need. So we just have to do with what we got. I've got everything, and I'm not going to go buy it because I've already got it. So anyhow, he's going to go down and check out the water. We have a boat ramp here if you've got a boat put out on the river. Sometimes I can hear them going by me in my cabin. Okay. It's not pollen as much as it's just nature. You can smell it in the air. We had a little bit of rain. Not much, but a little bit of rain this morning, and it's just that dampness makes it muggy. Okay, well, I've talked a little bit about Elijah, and I think I've talked about him in pieces. I haven't talked about him in his entirety, so I may still do that. But today I want to talk about Moses. We know him pretty well. He's the son of Levi parents. In order to be a priest, you have to be a Levite. And so I'm going to start in Exodus 3. And it's the introduction. I'm going to go ahead and read 1. We'll tell you what's going on and why they had to put Moses, which he's not his given name, but he will get that, Moses in the river to save him. And it was a plan. So let's turn to Exodus 3. Starting in, actually we're going to start it all the way back at the beginning. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that all the way back at the beginning. Exodus 1. That'll keep you up to date. I always like keeping things in context. Oh, in my last video, I said that Jesus was created. He was, as a man. Yes, his spirit existed with God because it's the Trinity. It's been around forever. But when we're talking about the sons of God, we're talking about angels. And the Son of God is also a creation. Jesus was half human, half God. But his Father was God, and that's where all the credit goes in the Jewish tradition. So I wasn't saying that he didn't exist and God created him. No, they're all the same. It's God. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. But as a man, he was created by God. So it's semantics. We don't need to get caught up in too much of that. Okay. Israel's suffering in Egypt. Now these are the names of the children of Israel who came to Egypt. Each man in his household came with Jacob, Reuben, Simon, Levi, and Judah. And you've got Ishkar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. All those who were descendants of Jacob were 70 persons, for Joseph was already in Egypt. You know the story of Joseph, where he was thrown into a pit to be picked up by slavers, or they got the idea that why leave him in the pit, we can sell him to slavers. Well, he eventually gets into Egypt. Okay. And Joseph died, all of his brothers and all of his generation. But the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and grew exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. Abram's promise, they're all descendants of Abraham. Now there arose a new king in Egypt who did not know Joseph, and said to his people, "Look, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and it happen in the event of a war that they join our enemies and fight against us. So go up out in the land. Go up out of the land. There, did I read that right? Fight against us and to go up out of the land." I don't know why they was worried about that, but these are crazy times back then too. Therefore they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh supply cities of Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. Satan's plans never work, they always backfire. And they were in dread of the children of Israel. So the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve with rigor, and they made their lives bitter and with hard bondage, in mortar and brick, in all manner of service of the field. All their service in which they made them serve was with rigor. Just toughened them up, that's all it did. The king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, of whom the name of one of them was Sifra, and the name of the other was Puah. And he said, "What your duties of a midwife for the Hebrew women, when you do your duties of the midwife of the Hebrew woman, and see them on their birth stools, if it is a son, then kill him. But if it's a daughter, then she shall live." I got to move my book. Some of it's in sun and some of it's in shadow, and it's hard to read. Okay. But the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt had commanded them, but saved the male children alive. So the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said to them, "Why have you done this thing and saved the male children?" And the midwives came up with a story. And the midwife said to Pharaoh, "Because the Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women, for they are lively and give birth before the midwives come to them." Little white lie to get away with it. Therefore God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very mighty. And so it was, because the midwives feared God, that he provided for the households for them. So the Pharaoh commanded all the people, saying, "Every son who was born shall be cast into the river, every daughter shall live." Okay. Enter Moses. And a man who was the house of Levi went and took a wife of a daughter of Levi. So the woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw it was a beautiful child, she hid him for 3 months. So he was 3 months old before he was put afloat. Not a newborn. But when she could no longer hide him, she took an ark of bulrushes, the reeds that grow near the river, for him, dabbed it with asphalt and pitch, and put a child in it. It's that black tar that they seal boats up and everything with, so it's been used for years. And his sister, and she laid him in the reeds of the riverbank, and his sister stood afar off. Girls were okay, so she could be there to watch, to know what would be done to him. Then the daughter of Pharaoh, Pharaoh's daughter himself, how about that? Sneak one over on him, let's do it big. Came down to bathe at the river, and her maidens walked along the riverside, and when they saw the ark among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it. And when she opened it, she saw it was a child, and behold, the baby wept. It's about the only thing they can do. This is one of the Hebrew children. There was obviously a skin color difference. Didn't bother him back then, did it? Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you?" Again, this is all orchestrated, planned. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the maiden went and called the child's mother. These are clever people back then, inspired by God. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you wages." She even got paid to take care of him. So the woman took the child and nursed him, and the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She called him Moses, saying, "Because I drew him from the water." Everybody's got names that mean something back then. Okay, now Moses gets into trouble. We're going to skip a few years. Now it came to pass in those days, we're going to skip a few years, when Moses had grown, that he went out with his brethren and looked at the burdens, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he looked this way and that, didn't look good enough, I guess, and when he saw no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 Hebrew men were fighting, and he said to one who did the wrong, "Why are you striking your companion?" And then he said, "Who made you prince or judge over us? Do you intend to kill me like you killed the Egyptian?" So the word was out. So Moses feared and said, "Surely this thing is known." When Pharaoh heard of this matter, he sought to kill Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well. Meeting places were wells. I guess today they call them Waffle Houses, at least in the South. So Moses feared and said, "Surely this..." Okay, we did all that. Okay, now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. How does he meet up with a priest? These coincidences are just amazing. Of course, there's no such thing as a coincidence, but I'm using the word because it shows you that things are just happening that shouldn't happen, but are happening. God's involved, of course. Now the priest of Midian and his 7 daughters, there's that magic number again. And they came and drew water, and they filled their troughs to water their father's flock. Then the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them, and watered their flock. When they came to their father, he said, "How is it that you have come so soon today?" "Well, an Egyptian delivered us from the hand of shepherds and drew enough water for us to water our flocks, so they were done early." So he said to the daughters, "Where is he? Why is it you've left this man? Call him that he may eat bread." Then Moses was content to live with the man, and he gave Zipporah his daughter to Moses. And she bore him a son, and his name was Geshem. For he said, "I have been a stranger in a foreign land." Now it happened in the process of time that the king of Egypt died, the bad one. And the children of Israel groaned because of their bondage, and they cried out. Their cry came up to God because of their bondage. So God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and with Jacob. And God looked upon the children of Israel, and God acknowledged them. Even without the Spirit in them, God's children have an ear in God. So much more do we have because we have a Spirit in us. We have God living within inside of us, our temple. Now this, I'm not solid gold like the Ark of the Covenant, but we're serving the same purpose. We're housing the Spirit of God. Now the Spirit of God is everywhere, but he can choose places to focus, to concentrate. I don't know how you want to call it. And we're one of them. If you're a Christian, you're a vessel for the Spirit of God. Most of the world is not. And if they want to get out of here before it really gets bad, they need to listen to us when we talk about Jesus. Okay, I'll read a little bit more. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father, the priest of his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the back of the desert and came to Horeb. You have to look all these sites up on a map. Most of these Bibles have maps in the back, and I'm not going to distract you with them, but I mean, if you turn to the back, you can find nice, colorful maps in a lot of Bibles now. Okay, came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Appropriate again. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire in the midst of a bush. So he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. Then Moses said, I will turn aside and see this great sight. Why the bush doesn't burn? He didn't know what it was for there yet. He just saw a burning bush. God put up a light. So when the Lord saw that he had turned aside to look, God called to him in the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. Whenever I have comments from God to people, I always think of Bill Cosby's Noah story, so I have to laugh. If you haven't heard it, you should see it. It's an old routine of his. And Moses said to him, Here I am. And he said, Do not draw near this place. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place you stand is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. So I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up to the land that is good, a large land, to the land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Pizarites and the Hivites and the Jebusites. If you put a sign on the end of it, they're enemies of Israel, or will be if they're not already. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come now therefore, I will send you to Pharaoh, that he may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And Moses didn't want to go. Moses tends to be very frank with God, and it's interesting watching their conversations. At some point in time, he's talking to God, and he's complaining because they're complaining to him. He's going, God, these aren't the children of Moses. These are the children of God. Why have you afflicted me with them? So he does have a frank way of speaking. Sometimes he speaks too harsh. Sometimes he reacts too harsh. But he was a good servant. He should have gotten into the promised land, but he didn't carry out God's wish on the water. He stroked the rock instead of speaking to it. God wanted him to do it a certain way, and he didn't listen. He did it that way before, but he didn't listen. And that's why he never got to see the promised land. In a little bit, he's going to be arguing with God, going, I'm a slow speaker. I don't know how to speak. You don't want me to go talk to these people. I can't do that. Eventually he says, can't you give me my brother Aaron to speak for me? And eventually he does. And you know the story. If you want me to read it, I'll read it later on. But they go through all the plagues, and the Pharaoh's heart keeps getting hardened until finally the Passover. Put the blood on the lintel, and whatever parasite or fly or whatever it was that was carrying the disease, it would skip that house and go on to the next. We're not exactly sure how it happened, but because of that, protected by the blood, that has always been God's rule, his way of doing things. And Pharaoh's firstborn was killed, and then he let him go. And then he had a change of heart and chased after him. And then Charlton Heston parted the waters. If you've been to Universal Studios out in Southern California, you can drive through the water that they part. It's a movie illusion, but it's the effect. Okay. Well, God does real miracles and not movie illusions. And he's got a bunch in store for this world coming up. I mentioned if you wanted to get an idea of what the world is in for, it's not an exact match. It's just a science fiction movie, and they didn't have any clue about science fiction, about science when they created the science fiction. That's why it's science fiction. You know, we can't send a rocket into space. It's impossible. But they did. The Day the Earth Stood Still. No, not that one. When Worlds Collide. Another good movie. I like both of them. But it's interesting to show the characteristics of people in crisis. When worlds collide, they were working hand in hand to build this rocket. And when the 40 were picked, the other ones ran and grabbed the guns and tried to stop them. People will panic. And then one will lead the panic and everybody will follow like sheep. And you get to see some destruction of the world. New York City underneath water. We're going to actually see that? I don't know. Mountains are going to fall into the water, and we're going to have asteroids hitting us and volcanoes and all kinds of earthquakes. There's going to be a lot of stuff. I wouldn't mind watching it from a safe place. And what better place than heaven? But as I've said, I don't know what we're doing when we get there. I think we're going up there to continue our education and perhaps begin our training on running things. Because when we come back, there's a battle to fight. Are we going to be part of that army? You're going to have to tell me how to fight. I don't know how to use a lightsaber. I have one, along with my other cosplay outfits, but I don't know how to use it. And are we going up before or after the Antichrist is thrown from heaven? Satan is thrown to earth from heaven. There's a war up there. They're going to kick Satan out. He's been going back and forth telling nasty stories about us, lying to God about us, telling on us when we're doing something wrong, as if God doesn't already know. But are we going up first? Are we coming down as an army because we went up there and fought Satan and kicked him out of heaven? So we're experienced at fighting, so we know how to fight when we come back at the end of the 7th year? I don't know. I'd like that. I'm ex-military. I'm a black belt. That would be fun. And with a new body that I could actually do stuff with. I've had to quit martial arts because I can't kick with bad knees. Most people who do martial arts don't get in the movies and fight like that. And half the time that's all fiction fighting anyway. Guys flying through the air for 150 feet and landing and killing 10 people, that's fiction. But real masters can defend themselves. And I think everybody should have a little bit of self-defense. We got a little mixed stuff in the military, but taking it as training, it was good discipline. I put my boys in it. They got tired of it after a while, and while I was watching them train, I decided I might as well start training because I'm sitting out here doing nothing. I got all the way through to a black belt and they quit. I almost got my second black belt in Hapkido, but I missed the testing date dealing with my mother, but that's all right. I got that far. All right. Keep busy. Help others. Keep yourself strong, especially since we don't know what we're going to do if we get to fight. I don't want to fight good people, but I like to see some bad people get pushed around. There's so many bad people on this earth right now. I cannot wait to get out of here. So I seem calm and gentle, but yet I have a black belt. That's because I'm confident. You should be confident in everything you do. One, go far enough into it that you know what you're doing, and always have God by your side. Okay, until we meet in the clouds, God bless. This is a really nice park. It's kind of off the beaten path. It's not as crowded as some of the other parks.